We're now live, and it's great to be live and joined by Craig A. Williamson. Craig, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Mike. It's my pleasure to be with the man in person, Mentor Mike.
Well, it goes both ways, but probably more so I'm privileged to have you join us on this live stream because you're the guy who has so much to share about things that are important in life, regarding things that are important in life, regarding things that matter, but also regarding substance abuse and addiction. In fact, you've written books on both titles, and this comes from personal experience, personal painful experience to do with a close family member, and we're going to discuss that because you're open about it, you talk about it, you write about it, and you hope and you do help others through the pain and the experience of your own story. Before we get into that, Craig, let's just start with a little bit of personal background. So where are you right now? Where are you living?
I am in just out of the pool, actually, after a bike ride. I'm in Scottsdale, Arizona. And it's what, March 25th today? Is that today? March.
It would be 26th where you are.
Yeah.
And March 27 where I am in Melbourne, Australia. And as I always say, if you want tonight's lotto winning numbers, just hit me up. I'll always share half with you. Now, Scottsdale, Arizona reminds me of something, and that's where there are a lot of professional speakers who live in Scottsdale, Arizona. The likes of Joel Weldon and others come to mind, but that's a discussion for another time. I believe it's a very pretty and lovely place on the planet to live.
It is. It is.
Now, what's your typical day look like at the moment? Because I know you're into fitness, you're writing, you've written 2 books, you've launched a Substack newsletter, hence us being together on this live stream now to talk about that. But what's a typical day in the life of Craig? Because you're now retired, are you not?
I don't feel like it. Well, the most typical days, I just had a couple big days. My daughter got married. I think we were talking about, you're kind enough to be my friend. And so that was a busy weekend, but there's a lot going on. Substack, I got to tell you that Substack uh, doesn't leave a lot of extra time sometimes. If you're in the flow and you're contributing and you're writing and you're interacting, I mean, you're on Substack. So I'm not a good guy to be on a screen long term, but I've been spending more time on Substack than I ever imagined.
That's interesting. You mentioned a few cues there, being in the flow. Any writer or creator, a creative, is familiar with that term, being in the flow, and it's not an easy thing to get into. Do you find being in the flow comes to you naturally, or do you have to consciously work at it?
Oh, I'm not that experienced. I think I'm not working at it. I'm more riding the wave. The writing thing's just been a couple years for me, and I don't make any effort to manage it. Although the exception would be the Substack. If you've committed to a newsletter and you want to get one out, you got to put your nose into the material long enough to be happy about what you're putting out, right? But for the most part, the writing, it comes a lot at night when I sleep, and I'll get up and I'll write for a few hours and go back to bed. If it's not happening, I don't force it.
I think you've mentioned to me in the past something that others might relate to as what's called conscious stream or inspired writing, or writing ideas that come to you, like you mentioned, in the middle of the night, and you wake up and you put pen to paper or you start tapping on the keyboards, and before you know it, you've punched out 1,000 words or 500 words or whatever.
Yeah,
This is something you've experienced, right?
yeah, yeah.
And is this what was involved in writing your first book regarding things that matter?
Yeah, I think my entire writing experience has been that sort of, I don't want to say transformational, but that sort of flow thing, where I feel like I'm just being used like a conduit. I don't really know how to explain it. But yeah, both books were like that. Substack is like that. I feel like a wellspring of all these ideas or insights, and then it's quite a personal growth process to articulate it. When you try to put an idea into words and to do it in a way that reflects your real intent, I mean, that's a creative exercise. So I've enjoyed that. Um, yeah,
So I want to hang on
great.
this for just a moment, Craig, because it's almost a throwaway line there that I picked up, that you sometimes feel like you're a conduit.
Yeah,
So let's just tap onto that for a minute. Uh, if you do feel like a conduit, do you have any sense of insight or awareness of where that pipeline is beginning?
yeah, it's connected at two ends, and so I started. So my son died at age 29 after a 13-year struggle with addiction was one of his things. He happened to have diabetes and Addison's disease, which were enormously complicating factors, which I won't comment on in this setting. But when he passed, I felt like I wanted to take a stand in the world for what I thought was important. And so it was sort of maybe like speaking to my son about what I thought mattered, but it became more than that. It became an emptying of my own understanding of the things that mattered. So I started out by making a chapter list, and they were all of life's most, vexing, wonderful things, everything from sex and intimacy to identity to um, uh, the word to healthy living, to fitness, to grieving. There was just, and so each chapter, and then I wrote a little bit, but I didn't write. I don't like it when someone tells me, here's the 7 ways that you can get your shit together. I don't know. That's like, I don't want to read it super carefully. So I didn't do that on purpose. I did it more like, wow, check out this bone. Here's a few thoughts I have about it. And then like sort of leave it hanging and then go on to the next thing, frankly, and let people explore the ideas for themselves. I don't know if that was
Your
a
son,
ramble. You asked me a question, right?
yeah. Well, I've just made a mental note to not launch and publish the 7 tips to fast ride, whatever
Oh,
the
right. Yeah.
title.
No, don't do that.
Yeah, I'm binning that idea. Um, well, of course, we offer our condolences for your family's loss. Your son, may I ask his first name?
Yeah, Clay. So Clay, and thanks for the sentiment. I obviously appreciate it. That um, period, right? But I tell you, life. A lot of times you clunk your head and then you turn it and see something else, and it's like things have a way of having a good side, and so I'm enjoying a renaissance. This writing, for example, and then the way that I'm able to connect in the world has been, part of that same experience, right? So
Yeah, so I'm intrigued where this pragmatic, you're appearing, you do come across to me, Craig, because we've spoken a number of times previously, and we've become friends. And because those viewers may not know that my own background with addiction, which I'm very fortunate to have overcome, and now sober for I think it's 15 plus years. However, um, you've got a very pragmatic. You're expressing yourself in a very pragmatic way, but let's just let's just presume we have people who are joining us today, Craig, or who may be watching or listening to this as a recording, who may be going through a family member with the disease of addiction, alcohol or other drugs, and they're struggling and they want to do something to help, but they find that they can't. Did you and your family go through similar feelings, and what have you got to say to that and to those
yeah.
viewers?
Well, I picked up on the little jab there about being pragmatic, which I think suggests maybe I was strangely apart from the horror of it all. Time does that for us, but additionally, to answer your question, one of the things the loved one can do is recognize that they're not the person who's struggling. So the way that God made us, each one of us is discrete and separate on our own, right? And so you still have your own life. You still are your own person. And if you collapse into a situation where the quality of your life and the amount of joy that you can experience is tied to what's going on with another person, you're screwed. You can't, you don't want to do that because it's not a good ride with that person, right? I mean, even if it works out well, it's hard. So I would say just remember you are your own person. You are not this other person, and give yourself some space, and don't collapse into it. Would be one thing I would say.
I've personally also not well, there have been family members, but I know of many. I mean, more than a dozen people who have succumbed to addiction. They're no longer with us, and again, I'm thinking of our viewer or our listener post recording, Craig, who may now be in that phase of having lost a close family member or a close friend or associate to addiction, and they're struggling to come to terms with that passing. Now, can you comment to that?
Well, I'll try. I have a frustrating one right now. So the young man that Clay was with, Clay was doing well, which is typically one of the most dangerous parts, and you do well early. And he went to Los Angeles for the Fourth of July weekend and hooked up with an old friend, and he came in contact with the substance that took him. And his friend drove him to the hospital. And I guess Clay was 107-degree temperature and kicking the windshield out or something, but drove him to the hospital and then dropped him off and then took off. Well, his friend is not able to get over it. I continue to get reports from him that he's unable to function because of the grief. He feels like it was his fault that Clay passed, and it doesn't matter what I say to him. He can't get over it. And he was an addict. He's an addict himself. So he's like he was already in the mud pit, and now this happened. So, um, and I just, in the beginning, I made a deal with him like he was going to live bold as a testament to Clay, and he was all excited about that. But like is often the case with addicts, their good intentions don't survive overnight. And, he just isn't able to stay on task with something that long term and vague. So he's struggling, and I can't do anything about it. I'm here when the time is right, but a lot of so the loved ones. So there's this notion out there about hitting bottom. So here's an example. I'm trying to answer your question about what to say would be helpful to families with somebody struggling. So there's this notion of a bottom, and it's like the idea is that a person then moves north from there, and there's a great story afterwards. Well, the observer, the loved one, doesn't have anything to say about what the bottom is. I mean, sometimes, like I had a situation, Clay, by the way, he was a great kid. It wasn't like he had any sort of criminality. That's one of the things about addiction is it alters your values and your perception. But anyhow, he drove through a building, or the corner of a building, but enough to take a good hunk of it out, and then hit a couple of parked cars and ended up somewhere pulled over and got arrested and put in jail in like the worst part of California where you're like, you don't know what could happen to you, and a lot of it isn't good in there. And I thought, oh my God, thank God we finally hit bottom. And my wife and I are like celebrating. At least we got to bottom, right? And that, texting his phone when you get out, let us know. And like here we're gonna build on from this. And then he got out way too early. The system doesn't really work, but he got out like in the middle of the night, blew us off for 2 days, rehooked up with his drug supply, and that wasn't a bottom. So you can't, you just really can't over attach yourself to what's happening with the loved one because it escapes. It's an unknowable thing of what's going to happen next.
Such an important point you've made from my perspective. And what comes to mind is what is rock bottom? It's 100% subjective,
Yeah.
and I don't think it's event related. From my own experience, it's emotion related. And so it's not about the event, but it's where one gets to emotionally, an emotional rock bottom, whether whether the experience and what happens when you're addicted with the lifestyle, whether you end up in prison, you're locked up in a psych ward, or whatever, it's the emotional response to what's happening.
Yeah.
And I'm so sorry, Craig, and I'm sure
Well,
our viewers and
well,
listeners.
thank you. I want to build. So people need to educate themselves because this, like you just made a very subtle point, right? So the loved one understandably views rock bottom as an event, right? And then they're like waiting. But I've heard people say they hit rock bottom, laying all comfy in their bed, right? And then they
Mm,
had the shadow of the valley of darkness, and they hit rock bottom, but there wasn't like they were in a crisis, right? It was emotional. So that's an example of the sort of learning that there's no way you're going to know it intuitively, right? You have to get educated. And if you're a family or a loved one who's struggling, I mean, I'm here to tell you that you don't have any easy way out. So don't get excited about that idea. But the more you know, the better off you are. And so a lot of these things that you're going to figure out, you can figure out by reading it ahead of time. And then when it happens in the real world in the moment, you'll be better equipped to respond properly. And in this example, if you knew a rock bottom was emotional and not event, right? I mean, that would look how I handled it when I didn't understand that.
very important, Craig. And for our viewers joining us right now live, we're talking with Craig A. Williamson. He has a newly launched Substack newsletter titled Lessons from Addiction. He's been telling us and sharing with us, as he has done through his newsletter and also his books, of the passing of his own son, Clay, who had the disease of addiction. And all right, let's move on then, Craig. You've got there'll be links, by the way, I'll share. But all you need to do for those watching and listening on Substack is search lessons from addiction or Craig A. Williamson with the A in the middle, because there is another Craig Williamson around and probably does a tremendous job like you do, Craig. But we need to delineate between that Craig and Craig
Yeah,
A. Williamson, our guest on the show. Let's come back to Substack because our viewers and listeners are Substackers,
yeah,
and some may have just launched their first Substack yesterday, and some others may be superstars on Substack, and are those who help and guide others in building their Substack. So, well, what triggered you to actually start a newsletter on Substack?
yeah. And I might embarrass myself by having hyperbole, which I try to avoid. But when I started figuring out Substack, I kind of thought it was to learning what the internet was to communication. Just the way that it unbridles the brightest minds and most articulate people and makes them available. I mean, it's like you're being spoon fed. It's so good. I mean, whatever you want. So I love the learning part of it, right? And then I did that first before I started writing. But then the writing, it's just a very enabling environment, right? It's like I struggle here, Mike. You might have to smack me around, but so like I'm one of those guys that I disdain social media, right? So, and my publishers of my books get unhappy with me because they say you can't live under a rock and sell books, and I'm like, well, I guess that's okay. But so I don't do that. But then I got to Substack, and it's like there is a social media dimension to Substack, right? I'm still learning all the time. It's like how you use it. It's bigger than any one of us. It's more how you want to use Substack.
Well, it's growing, and it has become. There is a feature and a function of Substack that we're all learning still how it works and how it can work. I think how it works is how we make it work rather than how it's predetermined that it's going to
Yeah,
work. I like a lot of things that evolve, and this is how I see it anyway, my take on it. And that's specifically, I'm referring to the use of notes, which is to me a little bit like a social media platform within the Substack platform. But I want to come back to something So you're writing and you're publishing your written words to a platform. So just to take a devil's advocate point of view, why 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 don't we just write like journaling and be satisfied with that? If it's all about
Yeah,
just expressing our thoughts into words on paper, why don't we just leave it at a private journal? Why do we publicly want to share our words?
yeah, yeah. Such a good question. Now, I was thinking of musicians maybe sometimes ask the same question. Why do they have to play to an audience? Um, and I'm sure the answer varies by. In fact, I'm the odd guy out, so you probably don't want to be asking me because nobody else probably has an answer like I do. But um, I I have this idea of a giving model, and I didn't think of it. It's pretty popular, but you've got your time, talent, and your treasure, right? So how do you apply those in your life that reflects your values? But I think there's also another one, and that's influence. And so um, I want to. It's like giving your time or giving your money. If you can give your ideas. So I'm real careful to be respectful and like not tell people the answers. I just say, hey, here's a really good question, and have you thought about it this way? And if people have different ways, that's one of the cool things on Substack is sometimes people write and add comments that you didn't think of that, right? And so um, everybody's learning. I like learning a lot. Substack is a kind of steroid for learning, so I like to take it regularly. Um,
And look, I've come to know you as a very humble man, and that's endearing. And and I hear what you say about not wanting to take the position of an expert insofar as what you say in print, your expressed thoughts in words that people read. You don't want necessarily to take the position where you're telling people what to do. And yet, because I do have a contrarian view, if you'll permit me, and that is I'm
yes.
reminded of the words of Dan S. Kennedy. Now, he's a marketing guy, very successful, but I remember his saying, and that he said half the population is walking around with their umbilical cord still in their hand, looking for somewhere to plug it in. And
Mm,
what that really meant to me was, well, it didn't mean to me. He stated in no uncertain terms, people want and people are looking for direction. People are this why it's why guides and how tos sell so well because people are
yeah.
always looking for an answer and
Yeah.
tell me what to do next kind
Yeah.
of thing from somebody
Yeah.
and someone with your experience. Uh, to my way of thinking, could almost position your whole message along the lines of, well, this is where my experience has led me to today. And based on that experience, if you've got questions that remain unanswered, I'm going to give you what I think the answers are. And it's up to you then to take them or leave them. That's
Yeah.
my position on it.
Yeah. And I like that. And you might even feel that way sometimes, but I have to be honest. I keep a Word document. It's probably my oldest file on my computer, a Word document. And it's titled Times I Was Wrong. And I periodically open it up and I make new entries. And it's got to be the longest document that I've got. And I'm continuously adding entries where I was like exactly opposite. My new understanding is exactly opposite of my old understanding. So um, I'm not overconfident. I don't know if I want to have that kind of responsibility. I don't mind giving you some things to think about and tell you what I think about them and what I've
Yeah.
experienced. But each of us are going to figure out for themselves. So that's the spirit of my writing. And I'm not, and I don't know what'll happen over time in terms of the mix of people that I fall into relationship through Substack. But I don't want to just have an addiction thing. I think the lessons that you learn through the fires of addiction are lessons that are universal for everybody. There's like hardly anything I can think of where it's like, okay, here's something we learned, and then it's like, wait a minute, everybody needs to know about that, right? That applies whether you're struggling with addiction or not. So I'm really trying to speak to this intersection of wisdoms that are universal that also get brought to light in the addiction struggle.
Well,
Um,
you do it. You are doing it, and you do it well. And you're in the wisdom phase of life, the wisdom years. I don't think I'm breaking any confidences to share with others that you're in your mid-60s, and you've had a successful professional career. You were a CEO, and so you're in a position of leadership and self-employment, I believe, also for many years. And so the experience that you've got now that you're in the wisdom years is to my way of thinking like a vault. I think you mentioned a vault or a bank vault
Yeah,
earlier
yeah,
in your and this is what
yeah,
you open up and share with others. So your newsletter now, this new newsletter you launched is titled Lessons from Addiction. But let's just move into a slightly broader uh, perspective rather than addiction, as you mentioned there. And lessons, shall we? Well, no, let's go back. Your first book was regarding things that matter.
right.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about things that matter based on the wisdom years you've got. You open up the bank vault, you've got
Yeah,
wisdom to share. What are the things that matter?
yeah. Well, boy, that that's a whole. I wrote a whole book about that actually. um, you start with like the chapter titles, right? So I didn't mean to go in order, but identity matters. Like, who are you? I'll leave that dangling. And I put right up there behind identity freedom. Freedom is a an American thing. Of course, it's more than America. It's also kind of a faith thing. You can have a lot of freedom if you have faith. They kind of go together. And then I write about uh, I said identity, right? Did we say that? Identity, freedom, um, personal responsibility, uh, love and intimacy, sex and intimacy, money and wealth, words in the word. I even wrote a little bit about environment. I think that's an important, complicated topic. And so grief, I wrote about grief. Actually, right up to the front is also relationships, right? So there's a pretty good argument you can make. I've heard it made, and I think I actually buy it. Is that of all there is, the most important thing is relationships, right? And there's a whole. And then I had one guy dying, and he gave that answer, and I just told him that was not a good enough answer. I wanted clarification, even if you're dying, because it's like it doesn't make sense to me. Um, it just didn't when I first heard it. And he says, "Well, what are the two greatest commandments?" And I'm not a super churchy guy, but but love the Lord and love your neighbor. He goes, "Yes." And by the way, those are just relationships. And it's like, oh, I get it. So anyhow, you could get me started on any particular topic, but regarding things that matter, um, part of the labor for me was like what makes the list and what doesn't. And in fact, when I first started writing the book, I had like a second section, things that don't matter. And the publisher said, "Well, that's bullshit. You can't do that. That doesn't make any sense in a book like this. Just leave it out." And so all the things that didn't matter didn't get included.
Regarding things that matter, that's
It's on
how I came to
Amazon.
meet you.
Yeah,
But pardon me.
it's on Amazon.
It's on Amazon. There'll be a link. It's a link that you include in your
Oh,
profile, I believe, on
that's
your
right.
page. And it's how I came to meet you initially. I received an invite from your publisher to review the book, which I did,
Oh, I
and I
remember
wrote
that.
that
I
up.
remember that.
And that's how we came. That's how our paths crossed. Let's let me just let me just ask because I'm curious. Now I know you're a man of faith.
I am.
You're a man of a Christian faith,
I am.
and uh, you said bullshit, and you said the four letter word sex. I thought they were no go zones for those with a faith.
Oh, I guess that's bullshit. There's
That's beautiful.
you do adopt a set of values, and there are a lot of things that are like non-negotiable, and the things that you value. And then you're a human being. You're doing the best you can. You're fumbling along, and then there's some stuff that's sort of on the gray line. So I don't think profanity is like my idea of a good time, but I'm not going to bend my brain about trying to be the guy who never swore.
Yeah, yeah. That's it. It brings to me it brings the authenticity. And I know authenticity for you is one of your cornerstones. We've mentioned this. You've mentioned this to me in the past. How important authenticity is in your
Mm,
writing, and being true to oneself and presenting yourself honestly to those who are coming across your newsletter, your writing.
yeah,
Uh, we'll wind it up soon, Craig. Time always flies when you're having fun. We've been talking with Craig A. Williamson. He authored two books regarding things that matter, and then regarding substance abuse and addiction. He and his wife and daughter, together as a family, lost Clay, Craig's son, at age 29. Is that right?
right.
Uh, Due to addiction. And Craig and his family have moved on from that as best you can. And now Craig writes and does other things, because this is the curious thing. Um, I mentioned earlier that I do know of at least a dozen, maybe more, people who have passed away due to addiction, and I've seen their families, some of their family members, never ever recover from it. It just is so soul destroying. They live in true clinical depression and never come out of it. And yet, I'm so inspired by, Craig, how you seem to have been able to move on in positive ways. And I'm obviously, the pain and the hurt is still there, but now you've taken this experience and you're sharing it in the hope that you can influence, because that's your own word, not mine, influence others in a positive way. And you're doing that through your books, your newsletter. You're doing it by the braveness to come on a live stream video at invitation and discuss this. And I thank you, and I actually applaud you, Craig, in the way that you um, do what you do, and I thank you
Yeah.
for it.
And I want to just leave a comment, like maybe like a hook at the end. I don't know, but you did mention that my family's moved on, and we have, and I have, and it's okay. But I tell you, one of the things, you don't want to be that person that looks back and has doubts about could you have done better. And that's another reason why you want to get educated, so you can do the best you can do. It's a very important for you to go forward if anything ever happens, where you can say that you always know you did the best you could, right? And so that's part of I hope those people with that spirit, come around and then advantage themselves from the experiences of others.
Yeah, that's powerful, Craig, and I'm sure somebody who may be watching or viewing now or in the recording, who may be going through the experience of having a loved one, a family member, a close friend, a colleague struggling with addiction, will think about that. And also those who have lost somebody due to addiction and may still be struggling with those questions and thoughts, because that's the natural inclination to take. Could I have done something better? Did I do the right thing? Did I do the wrong thing when I said that? Can we
How
just
come I
touch on
didn't
something
know?
before?
Yeah. How come I didn't
Did,
know? Yeah.
well, something that I've read of yours. We'll wind up with this then, Craig. But it's since you bring that last point up, let it be the second last point, because when you've got somebody close to you who is struggling addiction, we're touching on now the subject of enabling through behaviour, and also the tough love. At what point can you confidently and comfortably say to yourself or express literally to the loved one, "You're on your own. This is your behaviour. We can't do any more. The consequences are with you."
Yeah, it's never cut and dried and comfortable, and it isn't even the right way to look at it. You're really most concerned about your own behavior, not the other person's behavior. And your behavior and enabling, by the way, is your behavior, not theirs. If that was the topic you wanted to bring up, which we shouldn't talk about
Correct.
because too much there.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
love with detachment. It fits with how we opened, right? There should never be a doubt about your love, right? I mean, it's beyond anyone even. I mean, it's like like right there. You love unconditionally, but you're going to have love with detachment. It's not your life. You're going to take care of yourself, and it never gets really binary. Where the tough love thing to the extreme is another story, which I wouldn't recommend that people do that. I don't think people can die. They don't have to. Anyhow, I know
Right.
you're trying to wrap up, so I'll let this all be spice to come back for more, right?
Yeah, well, I think so. Thank you, Craig. I think you've just tapped and read my mind. I think we should, if you will, come back and do another one and make it a focus on this topic of enabling or not enabling. Tough love or no tough love is not the way to go, because it's mentioned a lot, tough love, and you've got your experience and opinions on it, and I'd love us to do this again and talk specifically on that topic.
Well, if you're the guy I think you are, I'll be happy to come back. If you're not, I'll have to get back to you. So, are you the guy that had like 1,000 likes over a note about how you subscribe to Substack newsletters and it's how the
It's a
person
mind.
makes you feel? Did you? Are you the guy who wrote that?
Oh, I love your style, Craig. Yes, and it's true, and it's interesting. Did you want me to answer to that?
Well, it sounds like you just admitted it.
Yeah, it and I think the most likes I had on a note up until a few days ago was maybe 20 or 30, and at last count on a note I published 2 days ago, there's over 600 likes and about 32 shares, and it's exactly how the Substack stars of Substack say that it works. If you publish a note or several notes every day and do it consistently, then what will happen is an incremental increase in engagement. And then all of a sudden, one day you'll wake up and there's just this exponential explosion of the graph goes upwards. And I've had two notes that have done that in as many days. It's just amazing. So uh, it happens.
Hope it doesn't take the fun out of it for you.
Oh, no, 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 no. It hasn't
All
gone to
right.
my head. I did get a bit excited, though, I must confess.
Okay.
Good on you. Well, Craig A. Williamson, thank you so much for joining us and uh, sharing some of your painful past, explaining to us a little bit more about your experience in launching a newsletter on Substack titled Lessons from Addiction, a little bit about your two books, which both are on Amazon, published through a publisher, regarding things that matter, and then the second book regarding substance abuse and addiction. And you'll find Craig's newsletter on Substack just by searching Craig A. Williamson or search Lessons from Addiction. Did I get it right?
You got it. Thank you.
Craig, thanks for joining us, and to our viewers, thank you for tuning in, whether you're on live right now. Thanks for coming on. And for those watching or listening post the live on the recording, thank you. And leave your comments if you've got any questions for Craig. Park them in the comments there, and I know Craig will be able to
Yeah,
answer them.
I'll take a
Until next
direct
time,
message. Yep. Okay. Thank
yeah.
you. All right.
Until next time, everybody, thanks, and be good, be kind, and be safe. Now, I made 600 likes on a note, but I can't see how to, I can't
So it
see the
still
end
says
button.
live to me.
Yeah, maybe if I press that. It's not the first time I've. Hang
Should
on.
I press it?
Please do.
Should I press live? Are we not live? Are we?
Yeah, we're still live.
Oh, okay. So now what do I do? Oh, it has all the viewers. All these viewers, I
Yeah,
apologize if you're watching us and we think we're off.
yeah. Bloopers looks like. Is this what a blooper looks like?
I'm going to hang up on you, Mike.
Yeah, do that, Craig. Thanks again for joining us. Really appreciate it. If anybody knows who's still viewing, and I can see that there's several with us, a number of you, send me a message now how I end this live stream, because I can't see the button. Write your message so I see it in the comment. End. Oh, it's not like I'm a neophyte when it comes to technology either. Still 11 people viewing according to the stats. If you're still watching and you're still tuned in, can you please send me a comment on what I need to press to end this? Here it is. I found it. Thank you. Wouldn't you know it? All I had to do was press end. I don't know why I couldn't find it. Okay. Bye for now. Mike Searles, Mentor Mike, signing off.